Michael had always been a man defined by his sense of stability. He prided himself on being the provider, the husband who worked tirelessly to ensure that his family wanted for nothing. The home he and Rachel built together was the epitome of suburban calm: neat lawn, the unmistakable scent of fresh-baked cookies wafting through the air, and laughter that echoed from their two children in the backyard. For Michael, life was a tapestry, stitched together with threads of hard work, loyalty, and love. Little did he know that these very threads were laced with deceit. It began with small signs, the kind that reverberate in the background of daily life, unnoticed until they culminate into a deafening roar. Rachel would come home late from yoga classes, a bit too perfect, wearing incense in her hair. And sometimes Michael caught that fleeting smell of a different cologne that's not his own. It was the same cologne that lingered on her neck when they kissed goodnight, a detail he ignored, convincing himself that it was merely a figment of an overactive imagination. Yet, the unease settled deeper with every passing day. Then came the evening that obliterated his illusions of stability. Michael had returned home early from work, a rare treat, excited to surprise Rachel with a dinner he had meticulously prepared. Garlic mashed potatoes, a perfectly seared steak, red wine that danced with secrets in the glass. He wanted everything to be perfect. But when he opened the door, the humming of the house sounded different. Familiar yet estranged. He followed the laughter that echoed from the master bedroom, a sound that sent icy tendrils crawling up his spine. Curiosity morphed into dread as he approached the door, hesitating slightly as he placed a shaky hand on the handle. Something primal urged him to retreat, but a second later, the handle turned, and he stepped into the chaos that forever altered his existence. The sight that met him was nothing short of a train wreck. Rachel, hair tousled, a flush to her cheeks that he'd once adored, was ensconced in the arms of his best friend Greg. Time paused, and with it, each heartbeat echoed in the cavernous silence that swallowed the room. The betrayal cracked him open, revealing the raw fury nestled in his chest, igniting like gasoline on a flame. "Mike!" Rachel gasped, genuine shock weaving through her voice, as if it were possible for her to be the victim. The laughter drained from Greg's face, replaced by the vacant mask of someone caught red-handed. Michael felt the world tilt on its axis. Rage and humiliation clashed within him, binding his muscles in tight knots. "Is this what you meant by working late?" he spat, voice low and lethal, each word dripping with betrayal. Michael was no longer the accommodating husband. A vengeful storm had awakened inside him. He watched as their alibi unraveled before his eyes, listened to the feeble excuses they attempted to weave, yet he remained unmoved, teetering dangerously close to a cliff of retribution. The initial shock ebbed, replaced by a simmering anger. He would not just walk away, he would dismantle the very foundations of their deceitful lives. That evening marked not just a betrayal, but a rebirth of sorts for Michael, a hardening of resolve that transformed him from the betrayed to the avenger. He meticulously devised his plan, a cocktail of ruthless pragmatism and emotional detachment to wrestle back control of his life. Michael was resolute to create a new narrative, one where Rachel and Greg would be the ones drowning in the fallout of their actions. It was a strategy exhilaratingly methodical. He began by establishing a security paper trail, sifting through their joint accounts. The golf trips, the expensive dinners, the lavish hotel stays, there, tucked within mundane bank statements, was the proof of their indiscretions. Michael felt a twisted satisfaction as he uncovered their financial betrayals, each transaction more damning than the last. He confronted Rachel with pictures of their shared finances, with dates marked, highlighting the expenses that pointed to their deception. The shock in her eyes, the anger morphing into panic, was a sight that both reinforced his resolve and fueled his hunger for justice. He understood now that the chasm of betrayal not only echoed in their personal lives, but also extended into the realms of their social circles, a social weapon he was willing to wield. The final stroke of defiance came at the upcoming company gala for Michael's firm. It became his stage to unveil the truth. As Rachel donned that lovely dress she knew he adored, she remained oblivious to the invisible target on her back. With each twirl, each laugh shared with guests, Michael felt the sinister thrill of his plan taking shape. The night would end with a bang that none would forget. Glancing around the room of chatter and celebration, Michael took a deep breath, steeling himself for the chaos to ensue. He was poised to obliterate the illusion of bliss that hung over Rachel and Greg, and he reveled in the anticipation. When he motioned for attention, a sudden hush took over the room, a tension-filled silence that crackled in the air. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, projecting his voice through the crowd, "tonight isn't just a celebration of success, it's also about revealing the truth." As he pulled out his phone, flicking through pictures until he found the damning shot, Rachel wrapped in Greg's arms, laughter frozen on their faces. "You all know Rachel and Greg," he continued, letting the words hang as he passed the phone around. Gasps erupted. Mouths dropped in disbelief. The tidal wave of truth crashed over the gala, sweeping through friends, colleagues, and well-wishers. Michael smiled as Rachel's face turned a pallid shade of white. As the photos circulated, so did murmurs that framed a narrative he had carefully orchestrated. Greg's bluster faded as he became surrounded by his colleagues who had once idolized him. The faces of sympathy turned to ones of judgment as they processed the betrayal, seeing the guilt painted across his features, just as it was across Rachel's. There was no escaping the reality they had crafted. They would face their reckoning with nowhere left to hide. The silence that enveloped the room was suffocating, the weight of betrayal palpable. Michael stood tall, watching with bated breath as Rachel's facade crumbled. Her desperate attempts to maintain composure were overshadowed by the disgusted gasps and scornful whispers bouncing off the gallery walls. It was a satisfying sight, a revelation that felt like a cleansing fire, driving back the darkness of the past months. "Michael, please," she stammered, her voice teetering on the cusp of hysteria as she locked eyes with him. "You don't want to do this. Let's talk this over. Just the two of us." "Talk?" he echoed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You mean you want to spin more lies?" The thrill of her panic surged through him, an adrenaline rush fueling his resolute stance. She could not hide behind false promises anymore. The truth would lay bare her treachery for all to see. Greg, once a pillar in Michael's life, now stood under the spotlight of ridicule, the masks of friendship slipping into oblivion. "Dude, this isn't fair," he shouted, his ingrained entitlement now shaken to its core. "You don't have to do this to us, man." Michael's lips curled into a chilling smile. "Oh, but I do. You thought the truth wouldn't come out? I've merely saved you the trouble of explaining yourselves." Each syllable was laced with disdain, the room watching him tear down the final vestiges of trust Rachel had with her peers, with the very foundations of her social life crumbling at his feet. As Rachel's friends turned away from her, the tide of support shifted, and the sting of betrayal sunk deeper. It was both poetic and rewarding to watch her lose her grip on the narrative she had spun so carefully. She recoiled, looking for someone to stand by her, only to find cold shoulders and dismissive glances. In these moments, Michael found power in the silence, the finality of exposure. "You brought this on yourself," he declared, his voice unwavering. "Every dinner you shared while lying to my face, every intimate moment you reduced to a charade, it all comes back to haunt you." The crowd felt a shift, a collective sentiment growing against the duo once they saw their trusted friend laid bare. The scandal was no longer a secret locked within closed doors. It had erupted like a volcano, spilling forth molten truths and revealing the deepest of betrayals. "Is this love, Rachel?" Michael asked, his tone now softer but no less biting. "You celebrated our life together while building an entirely different one with him. In your ignorance, you broke the trust we built. But you know what? It's time for you both to face the consequences." With a pointed gesture towards the mic, he turned towards the people still captivated by the unfolding drama. "Let this be a lesson today, friends. Love is a delicate thing, easily shattered by deceit. Here you have the epitome of betrayal, a graphic reminder that nothing is more destructive than infidelity. The momentum was undeniable. The room buzzed with confirmation of shared outrage, and Michael relished in the approval washing over him. Not content with letting them wallow in emotional despair alone, he pulled out his phone again, scrolling to another file, the financial documents. And here's a little something to clarify why Greg has been so friendly. You see, I discovered that Rachel has been financing Greg's lavish escapades. Here are the detailed transactions, he explained, holding up the prints as murmurs of disbelief rippled throughout the crowd. Expensive dinners, luxury hotel stays, all the while pretending to be a devoted wife. Gasps echoed through the attendees. Rachel's hand shot to her mouth, horror morphing her features into something grotesque, an imitation of guilt and indignation. The cruel satisfaction Michael experienced was exhilarating. They were showcased as the flaws of humanity. Tonight, we redefine accountability, he continued, his confidence ardent. Appropriate consequences will be met with appropriate actions. Stand witness to how betrayal and greed suffocate their masquerade. They thought they could share secrets without consequence. Tonight, we unveil who they truly are. The crowd watched, establishing a communal understanding of justice, a social contract forged through shared outrage. It was no longer just Michael's misery. It had transformed into a collective narrative of trust so keenly betrayed. Michael watched with glee as Rachel's facade fell apart piece by piece. Just when he thought the evening couldn't give birth to more revelations, Rachel broke her silence. "You're a monster, Michael. You're ruining everything we built." Her voice wavered, rage intermingled with desperation. He laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the laughter of former friends. "You're right, I'm a monster. But not for exposing your lies. I'm a monster for being a trusting fool who believed in you, stood by your side while you conspired behind my back. You destroyed our family, and now it's time for you to taste the bitterness of your own choices." Michael leaned in, his eyes piercing through her facade with unwavering certainty. "You deserve every ounce of this fallout, Rachel. You chose to betray love. We both know this isn't just fallout. It's a reckoning for your actions." The weight of his words settled heavily in the air. With the silence enveloping the room, he could feel the eyes of friends and strangers alike locked on the duo, waiting for any more of their delusions to crumble. Their betrayal had morphed into a grotesque spectacle, and the voyeuristic curiosity of the crowd lent him strength. "Tonight marks the end of your reign of deceit," he stated, a chill running through his voice, as if sealing a pact with their demise. "Rachel, you won't find refuge in lies anymore. When the dust settles, you'll be left with nothing but the memories of your own betrayal." His eyes turned to Greg, equally stripped down. The facade of camaraderie faded into nothing. "You thought playing both sides would grant you a slice of my life, but instead, you face public disgrace. This is where your friendships crumble, and you're left with nothing." Michael stepped back, allowing the audience to witness the fallout. Rachel and Greg stood amid a tableau of shattered trust, toxic consequences, and crumbling reputations, lost in the cacophony of judgment. Their cries faded into the chorus of the crowd, and as the evening progressed towards its inevitable conclusion, Michael felt a profound sense of liberation. In time, the tides would wash over the reality of their existence. They would be left grappling with their choices while he helmed the ship of his newfound life, steering towards the horizon of emotional resilience. Tonight, justice blossomed through ruin, the echoes of betrayal transforming not just his life, but an entire community's understanding of loyalty, exposing the price they paid for their twisted desires. There would be no mercy, no reconciliation. This was merely the beginning of their reckoning. Some wounds never heal, and some souls don't deserve redemption. As the gala unfolded into chaos, Michael found an unexpected sense of freedom washing over him. The emotional weight he had carried for so long began to lift. like a long-awaited storm finally clearing the air. Laughter and gossip danced in the ether of the grand hall, but it was not his laughter or gossip. It was their legacy, Rachel's and Greg's, unfolding before them, a testament to their folly. The evening wore on, and Michael savored the spectacle. He was no longer just a man wronged. He had become the architect of their public humiliation. Eyes turned toward Rachel and Greg, once admired figures in their community, now merely shadows of their previous selves, tainted by betrayal and stripped of their dignity. It was almost poetic, in a macabre sense, witnessing the brick wall of social standing they had built begin to crumble under its own weight. As the hours ticked by, whispers swirled around him, gathering momentum with the excitement of those who reveled in viewing the downfalls of others. Did you hear what she did? Can you believe he did that to his best friend? With each murmur, Michael felt the burning satisfaction of justice seep deeper into his bones. The audience had become accomplices to his revelation, sharing the burden of truth that would ensure Rachel and Greg didn't just lose status, but reverence as they became social pariahs. Then, as the clock inched toward 10, he spotted a man in the corner, Ethan, a longtime associate and confidant of Rachel. Michael noted the way Ethan observed Rachel, his hands clenching and unclenching, as if battling his own distaste for the scene before him. Michael knew that Ethan had once pursued Rachel during their early marriage, a time when her devotion had seemed unbreakable. But she had chosen Michael then and made him believe that love conquers all. Now, as he watched Ethan's expression twist into a grimace of pity mixed with disgust, Michael saw his vested interests slide away with every glimpse of their debacle. "Ethan!" Michael called out, the name echoing around the hall, demanding attention. Ethan stepped forward, hesitant at first but compelled to comply. "What do you make of this?" Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line, and he looked back at Rachel, torn between camaraderie and disapproval. "Crazy, man. I never thought she'd go this far," he admitted, the sincerity in his voice resonating but mixed with his own judgment. "That's what betrayal does, doesn't it?" "It reveals true colors," Michael replied, savored the irony in his statement. "Do you remember when she was so sweet, always bringing you cookies?" His tone was laced with sarcasm. "Well, it seems she had a taste for something different." Ethan nodded, his shoulders dropping slightly, as if he had been holding up the facade for far too long and now was ready to abandon it. You're right, man. She acted like you were the world to her." His voice trailed off, swallowed by a wave of regret. "Enough of the past," Michael interrupted swiftly, locking eyes with Ethan. "You see the monster in front of us now?" Rachel and Greg, hand in hand, trot around, believing they could just tear apart the world I built for them, for their own selfish desires. So tell me, Ethan, do you stand by them or against them? The question hung heavy in the air, charged with challenge. Ethan seemed to realize this was his moment to choose a side, and in a crowded room still processing the fallout, every heartbeat seemed to quicken. I stand against this. I never could agree with cheating. You know that," Ethan replied, showing signs of renewed steel in his spine. "They've betrayed not just you, but the respect we've all built with them." "Wise choice," Michael observed, nodding with grim satisfaction. With Ethan's hesitant yet cooperative demeanor, he began formulating his next move to ensure that Rachel's and Greg's failures were etched into the memories of everyone present. As he cornered Ethan, Michael pulled him aside and shared a calculated whisper. "Help me take this all one step further. They need to understand the weight of their lies, and perhaps we can let the people's outrage turn into something truly devastating." Ethan regarded him curiously but with subtle admiration. "What do you want me to do?" With the plan forming between them, Michael resumed his position before the crowd, preparing for the next act of devastating revelation. He was no longer in a whirlwind of chaos. He was now the maestro in control, orchestrating the destruction of Rachel's and Greg's reputations with finesse. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed once more, cupping his hands around the mic. As you've all seen, this evening has turned quite revealing. But let's not forget the emotional damage this betrayal has caused. Tonight isn't just about apathy towards loyalty. It's about drawing a line in the sand for love, respect, and trust. He looked pointedly at Rachel and Greg, who stood like statues, their expressions now blanketed with panic, no escape in sight. I implore you all, reach into the depths of your hearts and consider what betrayal feels like. It's not just a betrayal of one person, it's a breach of an entire community. And tonight, he waved his arms out wide, encompassing the audience, we reclaim our trust and decency. A wave of murmured agreement rolled through the crowd, emboldened by Michael's fervent resolve. Their eyes flicked between him and the traitors, awaiting an execution of consequence that lay just beneath the surface. Tonight, let's vote, he declared, igniting a new vigor in the gathering throngs. Let's decide what should happen to those who seek to question our values. Should they linger among us and taint our friendships? Or should they be shown the door? The cheers erupted, lectures on the morality of their actions overshadowing the lingering glances of uncertainty from Rachel and Greg. The crowd began chanting for justice, buoyed by the palpable energy of revenge. As Michael surveyed the room, he noted the shift in atmosphere, eyes glistening with determination, supportive murmurs growing bolder. His heart raced, an electric sensation coursing through him. If there was ever a time for collective conscience to rise against the treachery embodied by Rachel and Greg, it was now. At that moment, he took the final step into his role, not just as a victim, but as a powerful agent of social reckoning. The chants of "out" reverberated off the walls, drowning out every shred of defense Rachel had left. It was a battle cry against the betrayal at large, a confrontation rooted in moral clarity and unwavering resolve. This was their reckoning. This was Michael's triumphant stand against the lies that had infiltrated his life. Suddenly, Rachel's composure cracked. "I didn't want this," she shouted, her fragile voice echoing through the din. "You're ruining everything." Her desperate cries were met with a storm of dissent. Without yielding, Michael continued, "This is your reckoning, Rachel. You have built your world on the ruins of our lives, and now it's time for you to face the consequences." In that moment, he saw not just an end, but the start of his rebirth, reclaiming not just trust from those surrounding him, but his own dignity and grounded self-worth. Even as he watched Rachel's veneer of calm dissolve entirely under the weight of collective judgment, he felt unyielding satisfaction wash over him. Michael seized the moment. Is this the kind of person we validate, friends? A betrayer who thinks it's acceptable to trample over love and relationships? His voice rose higher, resonating through the now electrified space filled with fervent resolve. Let every friendship that walks away tonight stand as a reminder. Trust should never be taken for granted. Rachel, Greg, pack your bags, because your time here is over. You have no place in our lives. And with that commanding declaration, Michael knew he had managed more than the end of a single story. He had ushered in the assurance of justice that would follow the tides of their crumbling social existence forevermore. There would be no reconciliation, only a legacy founded in betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of accountability that would see both Rachel and Greg fade into the shadows, honorable in reputation only as faint memories of lessons not to be repeated. Without a doubt, this was redemption wrapped in vengeance, the final blow cementing their fate as history's footnotes, all thanks to a little man who had dared to hold the mirror of truth and integrity up to their faces. As the chaos inside the gala erupted into a crescendo of chants and accusations, Michael could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had harnessed a powerful wind of collective indignation, the culmination of betrayal, and it surged like wildfire through the throngs of friends and colleagues who had gathered to celebrate, but now stood as witnesses to his redemptive stand against infidelity. Each chant, Each voice raised in defiance against Rachel and Greg fortified his resolve. He had finally wrested control from the hands of those who tried to undermine him. Rachel's face paled further as she tightened her grip on Greg's arm, a gesture of desperation against an oncoming storm. Their connection, once a symbol of camaraderie and shared laughter, was now withering under scrutiny. Michael watched Greg shift uncomfortably, his bravado crumbling as the laughter around him morphed into ugly mockery. The euphoric release of the crowd echoed in Michael's mind, a sweet melody of payback that resonated long after the barbs had floated into the air. "Michael, please," Rachel's voice broke through the noise, desperate and raw. "We can talk about this in private." But there was no longer any room for private conversation. The veil of deceit had been lifted, and the price of their treachery was finally being assessed in the harsh light of exposure. "Private?" he echoed, reveling in the surge of power that accompanied his words. "Let's make this public, shall we? Let's ensure everyone sees what happens to the treacherous when they play at love and loyalty as if it is merely a game." His heart raced as he stepped closer. The sheer thrill of confronting them in front of an audience fueled his words. The energy crackled through the hall, each breath taken with bated anticipation of what would unfold next. He could see the hope flickering in Rachel's eyes as she gauged the crowd, trying to find an ally amongst the sea of unforgiving faces. But it was futile. Betrayal had its costs, and tonight Michael ensured that those costs wouldn't escape without scrutiny. The warmth of their past friendship had evaporated, leaving only the icy tendrils of truth behind. And Michael stood at the center of it all, weaving a narrative that would last well beyond that night. "Rachel, do you even realize the pain you brought into our home? Into this community?" he demanded, shaking his head. His voice, strong and unwavering, pierced through the din. "You pretended to be a devoted wife, and yet you conspired behind closed doors, disfiguring the trust we built. This is more than a mistake. It's an intentional act of betrayal, a conscious choice to erase the love we shared." He turned to Greg, fixing his glare. "And you, Greg, my so-called friend. What made you think it was acceptable to take advantage of my trust for your own pleasure? You were not just my friend. You were like a brother to me." Michael's voice trembled, not with anger, but with the weight of disappointment, underscoring the depth of the betrayal. "I'll tell you what, your cowardice has painted a clearer picture of your character than you could ever envision. The facade you wore as my friend is now a mask that is peeling away in front of everyone. Your cowardice is on full display," Michael spat, feeling a fierce sense of satisfaction with each passing word. "I can't believe this," Rachel whispered, her voice breaking, remnants of anger swirling in her eyes. "You're allowing your pride to destroy everything we built. You're no better than me." The mere suggestion of equivalency pushed Michael further into the realm of vindication. Pride? This isn't pride, Rachel. This is the unyielding consequence of deceit. You choose to deflect blame, to twist reality, but tonight is the reckoning. The trust you shattered isn't something that can be brushed aside because of mere discontent. With the crowd's energy a collective pulse, he felt the tide of support drawing tighter around him, each onlooker brimming with anticipation for the closing act of this grievous play. It was time to deliver the final blow. The end of their charade loomed closer, ready to plunge Rachel and Greg into the depths of social ridicule. Michael raised his voice above the escalating fervor. "You wanted a new love. You wanted freedom from your commitment? Well, congratulations. You've earned your freedom tonight, one that comes at the price of your reputation and the ruins of your integrity. You will now wear your betrayal as a badge of shame in every circle you once thrived in." The onlookers erupted into supportive applause, united by the intoxicating spirit of the moment. Confessions of betrayal preceded by the uncomfortable backstory had become the currency they could share, a story woven through their relational tapestry, a reminder of the relentless folly that could bloom when love was grazed by infidelity. And as Rachel's shoulders drooped, as if the weight of her sins had finally descended upon her, Michael marveled at the transformation taking place. Their smiles faded, their connections unraveling like the frayed ropes of a sinking ship. This was a visible disintegration of the dreams they had built together, and every second felt like rubber bands stretching thin before breaking, leaving behind only echoes of a past distorted by treachery. Tonight, he continued, wanting his words to etch deeply into their psyches, will ripple through the fabric of our lives. This will not only be a lesson to you both, but a pledge from us all to always prioritize loyalty, love, and respect. We will not flinch in the face of betrayal, and we will never lose sight of what it means to build a community based on trust. With one last glance toward the enraged duo, he turned to the crowd. Let this be the moment that solidifies our bond. No more secrets, no more betrayal, and certainly no more duplicity. United, we stand for our shared values against the treachery that seeks to tear us apart. As Michael spoke, the chants morphed into cheers, a symphony of solidarity echoing through the hall. The people roared their approval, their camaraderie binding them closer together as they rallied against the transgressions laid bare before them. Defeated and disarmed, Rachel and Greg found themselves standing in the isolation of their deed. There was no solace to be found. All that remained hung like an albatross around their necks, a heavy, looming truth swaying them toward their imminent downfall. Then came the pivotal moment, that final dagger aimed straight at their hearts. And so, as we close tonight, let's ensure that they feel the impact of their choices and their betrayal. They can either face justice together or endure the loneliness of their actions separately. That choice, my friends, lies solely within their grasp. The consensus hit like a wave, the vocal crowd counting down together in rhythmic unison. 1, 2, 3, out, out, out. The chant reverberated, a mantra that would ground the decisions they would take moving forward. The tension exploded as Rachel and Greg slowly backed away, turned and retreated through the opening like caged animals set free, their world crumbling around them. In that instant, Michael felt the weight of vindication wrapping around him. Not just a sense of revenge, but a rebirth of his identity. Tonight wasn't merely about exposing their wrongs. It was about him rediscovering who he was when built on a foundation of trust. A comprehensive circle of understanding formed between friends, allies joining hands against the threat of betrayal, like an unshakable chain of strength woven through each shared experience, illuminating the promise of love and loyalty amidst indecency. And just like that, the remnants of Rachel's and Greg's lives slipped into darkness. As the evening wound down, joy lit Michael's face as they celebrated not just his resilience, but their collective stand against treachery, marking a victorious dawn, capable of weathering the fiercest of storms. True to form, here was the triumph of a little man over deceit, a tale destined to echo long after the night had faded, proving that even as shadows loomed, light, driven by unwavering loyalty and inner strength, would always prevail. The aftermath of the gala felt surreal to Michael. As the applause died down and the chatter gradually faded, leaving only the ghostly echoes of betrayal in its wake, he stood at the center of a new reality. The triumph of his confrontation pulsed through him like an electric current, invigorating and liberating, yet tempered by a somber understanding of what truly lay ahead. As friendships solidified around him in the wake of Rachel's and Greg's disgrace, he felt an overwhelming need to process the whirlwind of emotions that had consumed him. It was not merely the joy of victory that buoyed him. It was the fragile threads of trust he had almost lost, now reinforced by revealing the truth. Yet, amid the celebrations lay a stark reminder. The cost of betrayal was steep, and he had witnessed it firsthand. With farewell pleasantries lingering in the air, Michael slipped into a quieter corner of the hall, absorbing the first moments of solitude since the confrontation. He gazed out at the remnants of festivities still alive around him, the joyous laughter of friends echoing under the dim lights. The intoxicating euphoria played on repeat in his mind. But he could not shake the heaviness in his heart. While he had emerged victorious, the pain of betrayal still lingered. "Hey," came a familiar voice breaking through his contemplation. It was Ethan, stepping cautiously toward him, the remnants of the evening's turmoil etched across his face. "That was something else." Michael nodded, a weak smile breaking through his somber demeanor. "Yeah, it was a whole lot more than I anticipated." Ethan leaned against the wall beside him, glancing out into the crowd as they celebrated the newfound lightness of social relief. "You did what I think we all wanted to do, but you had the strength to say it. I just want to know, are you all right?" Putting on a brave face, Michael exhaled slowly. "Honestly, I'm still processing it all. It feels liberating to expose the truth, but it stings too. I thought I knew Rachel. Or at least the Rachel I believed in." "It's hard," Ethan replied, his voice softening. "When someone you care about betrays that care, it leaves you wondering if there was ever truth in your connection." "It does," Michael murmured. "We shared years together. I overlooked red flags because I wanted it to be real." The words felt heavy, a weight he wasn't entirely ready to bear. Yet sharing them with someone who understood provided a small moment of relief. But even as they spoke, the chaotic energy of the room pressed in with unrelenting reminders. Friends who flocked to congratulate Michael still peppered him with nervous glances as they danced around the fallout left by Rachel's and Greg's scandal. The reality was sinking in. They had cast aside friends they had once trusted, and who knew where that would lead in the long term? "Listen," Ethan said, breaking through the swirling thoughts. "You'll bounce back. You're not just a survivor, you're a fighter. Sometimes tearing down the walls allows for greater rebuilding." Chagrined, Michael half smiled at the encouraging words, but an ache remained. "But can I trust again, Ethan? Can I ever let anyone in like that?" "That's a question we all ask ourselves at some point," he replied earnestly. "But I think you will." Ethan clapped him on the shoulder, steadying him. "Trust is a muscle that can grow stronger. Just give it time." As the waves of social support washed over him, Michael eventually acknowledged that change needed time. He had been thrust into the spotlight, assumed the role of a driven avenger. But beneath him lay a foundation that hung by the thread of shattered trust. The days that followed the gala morphed into a mix of triumph and introspection. For the first time in years, Michael began to explore life without the cloak of doubt looming over him. He realigned his priorities, focusing on his work and his kids, embracing the simplicity of enjoyable moments shared rather than the echoes of betrayal that clung to him. The emotional landscape was still rocky, but he could feel the comfort of familiarity grounding him. Despite the clarity, shadows still hovered at the edges of his consciousness. As weeks rolled into months, whispers of Rachel's further downfall reached him through mutual friends. Once revered, she was now relegated to social obscurity, losing not only her semblance of respect, but also her inner circle. Meanwhile, Greg sank into stinging embarrassment, the reputation of her best friend discarded along with his own. One evening, as Michael helped his children with their homework, a knock disrupted their cozy environment. He glanced at the clock. It was unusually late for visitors. Curiosity piqued, he opened the door. Standing on his doorstep was Rachel, her visage transformed. She appeared smaller, worn without the confident spark he once recognized. The vibrant colors in her clothes dulled, weighed down by shadows slipping across her features. The moment hung suspended in time, his heart racing. He hadn't seen her since the gala. A hard, tightening knot of anticipation settling over him. "What are you doing here?" he asked, failing to mask his discomfort. "I need to talk," she said, her voice flimsy, as if caught between pain and resolve. "About what?" The cautious syllables escaped his lips, hardening in the air. "About everything," she replied, her fortitude beginning to fray. "I know I messed up. I wanted to ask for your forgiveness. I need to tell you how sorry I am." "Sorry?" he scoffed, disbelief flooding his voice. "You are sorry every time I caught you deceiving me." What makes this moment any different? Tears welled in her eyes, and he felt a flicker of pity mixed with an overwhelming urge to guard himself against the past. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I never intended for everything to spiral out of control. I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you. Michael hesitated, confronting the emotional grit knotting in the pit of his stomach. Betrayal lingered like a persistent ghost, but her sorrow felt real. It tugged at the remnants of their past, an echo of love that had once flourished between them. Rachel, he said slowly, finding his voice despite the emotional distance standing firmly between them. You broke trust in a way that cannot be easily stitched back together. Healing takes time, for both of us. But the difference is, I'm not sure I can ever allow myself to trust you again. Rachel swayed on her feet, visibly shaken. I didn't come here expecting it to be easy. I'm just asking for a chance to express my remorse. I'll never take you for granted again. Her words coiled around him like a noose, yet he squared his shoulders, mustering resolve. But you already did. I won't be dragged back into a place where deceit can thrive. You need to learn from this. You have to face what you did and the consequences that follow. I can't be the one to fix it for you. Taking a breath, he stepped closer, words heavy with ownership. I need to choose to move forward without that weight. And right now, the only path forward is away. Rachel looked shattered, her gaze falling to the ground. She opened her mouth but quieted, as if summoning the right words was futile. I understand, she finally said, voice hollow. As she turned to leave, a part of him felt the remnants of their past slip away. That night, standing in the doorway, he realized something profound. He felt liberated and unburdened, testing the measure of strength he had regained. Michael quietly closed the door as the shadows faded behind her, reassured that he was finally unfurling from the specter of betrayal. Perhaps forgiveness was within his reach one day, but today was not that day. He needed the distance, the space, and the quiet. A break from the emotional turmoil that had once bound him to a past. He now understood he had the power to shape anew. Streaming light from the hallway illuminated his children's laughter in the background, serving as a welcome reminder of the life he was reinvesting in. It was healing, a step toward reclaiming not just his joy, but the ability to trust the right people again. And just like that, he grasped the essence of freedom. The journey toward rebuilding would prove challenging, but he was ready to emerge from the shadows and become the architect of his own story, alive with new possibilities and ultimately defined by resilience. As the weeks passed reluctantly, Michael gradually embraced the quiet that had settled into his life. The uproar of the gala, and the culmination of his confrontation with Rachel and Greg, faded into a memory etched with both relief and apprehension. Slowly, he began to rebuild his world, brick by brick, around the lessons learned from betrayal, but with renewed appreciation for the connections worth nurturing. Work at the firm surged into full swing, introducing him to a sense of purpose that had grown stagnant before. Projects that once bored him now became outlets for his creativity, filled with newfound vigor. He understood now that a person could redefine themselves, even when they believed their path was dictated by others. The spark ignited into a flame, illuminating the next chapter of his life. At home, the atmosphere lightened too. Michael found joy in the little moments spent with his children, Ethan's supportive presence juxtaposing the weight of the past. Game nights turned into joyous celebrations. Cooking together became an opportunity for growing bonds, rather than just a necessity. They learned to dance with crayons and colors instead of sadness and betrayal. Over dinner one evening, laughter echoed through the kitchen, filling every corner where darkness had previously lingered. Michael felt a pull of hope as they shared jokes about life, school, and the antics of their quirky neighbors. His son, Danny, crackled with enthusiasm as he laid out plans for his science project. Dad, what if we built a rocket that launches cookies instead of regular rockets? Danny exclaimed. his eyes sparkling with unfiltered joy. "That sounds like a fantastic idea. We could get an entire class of kids to vote for cookies over boring old rockets," Michael laughed, pitching in to help. The warmth of the moment served as a shield against the lingering echoes of betrayal across his past. Yet, even as he reveled in these bright moments, the shadows lurked just beyond the horizon. Rachel had become a distant ghost. Though he felt empathy for her state, the frayed connection left behind felt insurmountable. Eventually, through mutual acquaintances, whispers of her struggles came back through the pipeline. How she had been forced to retreat from friendships, grappling with isolation birthed from her choices, facing the consequences of deception without the safety net she once had. One afternoon, Ethan stopped by unexpectedly. "You know, Rachel seems to be doing worse than anyone anticipated," he said, drawing Michael's attention. "I ran into one of her old friends today and heard she's all but isolated herself since the gala." "Good," Michael replied, the words slipping out. Immediately, he felt a pang of remorse for his abruptness. I mean, she made her choices. She'd have to face that reality if she wants to get better. Ethan nodded, understanding laced in his eyes. "I get that. But silence isn't always the path to redemption. Sometimes people don't realize how much they need to be held accountable and still have a chance at navigating back to some semblance of a normal life. Not saying you should save her, but just be mindful." Michael absorbed the wisdom in his friend's words, acknowledging the complexity surrounding the mess of human relationships. He was weary of reevaluating the emotional weight. However, those thoughts lingered as he mulled it over. Could Rachel evolve from this pain? Would redemption suddenly grant her a passage back into his life? The enormity of the situation shifted his perspective. On impulse, he reconsidered. If Rachel was genuinely seeking change, was there room for compassion amid the wreckage she had wrought? His resolve to keep her out of his life still stood firm, but a flicker of compassion emerged inside him. A few more weeks of contemplating the reach of forgiveness led to an expectation within him. When one day he received a call from a mutual acquaintance, Lucy, a longtime friend of Rachel's, inviting him over for coffee. Hesitant but intrigued, he agreed, preparing himself for what he expected could be yet another reminder of the pain Rachel had wrought. Over steaming mugs and shared pastries, Lucy dove straight into it. "It's really hard to watch Rachel like this, Michael," she said, as her fingers danced along the rim of her cup. "She feels trapped in her own mind after everything." "The isolation is suffocating," she added, her eyes searching his for understanding. The warmth of the conversation shifted, increasingly grounded in understanding. She realizes how badly she messed up. "You have to know she isn't getting out of this without facing the consequences. The fallout has been swift and merciless. She misses you and the kids terribly, and honestly, she's trying to figure out her next steps." An uncomfortable knot twisted in Michael's stomach. The distance that existed now felt as unreal as it did tangible. Yet, does she understand that the harm she caused can't be undone? "Why come to me now?" he questioned. "She made her bed, and she needs to lie in it." "But aren't you forgiving?" Lucy pressed gently. "We all know it's easier to build walls than bridges, but maybe reaching out doesn't mean inviting betrayal back. It could be mending a bridge for your own peace, for the kids." The idea weighed heavy on his mind, forcing him to confront his conflicting feelings. Michael had been so consumed by the fallout that the concept of extending a hand equated weakness. But was it truly? Days rolled into weeks, each carrying distinct fragments of introspection. The thought of Rachel wrestling with remorse transformed into a question he couldn't sidestep any longer. Perhaps through acknowledgement of their shared past, more than just as lovers or friends, he might empower someone else to seek redemption. At breakfast one morning, he decided to break that silence at home. "What would you guys think about inviting Ms. Rachel for dinner sometime?" he posed, watching his children's faces. Anxiety hung in the air, overlaying the conversations of laughter that usually radiated through their mornings. His daughter Mia looked up, Her sauce-covered spoon paused midair. "Isn't she the one who made you sad?" The innocence in her voice bore the weight of truth. "Yes, sweetheart. She hurt me, and I want to be careful," he answered, ruminating on the decision even as he spoke it into existence. "But I also believe she needs some kindness right now." Danny chimed in. "Maybe if we're nice, she can be nice too." "It's not that simple, buddy," he replied, glancing at Mia's big eyes, still waiting for answers. "But you're right. We always have to be mindful of others, just like we learned at school." As he shared those thoughts with his kids, Michael suddenly felt buoyed by his decisions. The idea bolstered his heart with the notion of a path forward. It wasn't about dismissing the pain. It was about forging intentions anchored in growth, a poignant shift away from the narratives that define them all. Later that week, with a shaky resolve, he reached out to Rachel. It felt surreal, but necessary. He laid out the invitation for dinner with both trepidation and hope. Her reply was swift, and he could sense her breathless anticipation even through the screen. "Thank you. I would love to come." The day of the dinner arrived, and he felt the nerves clench symbiotically with hope. As he prepared the meal and set the table, his children flitted about with excitement, oblivious to the complicated tapestry woven through their family's life. When the doorbell rang, time froze. He motioned for Danny and Mia to stay nearby. As he opened the door, Rachel stood there, a mixture of vulnerability and hope radiating from her. She appeared different. Her eyes held stories that mirrored shadows of her past, but held glimmers of haunting desire for reconnection. "Hi, Michael," she greeted softly, nervously wringing her hands. "Hey, Rachel," he replied, holding the door open. "Come on in." As she stepped over the threshold, he felt a simultaneous wave of trepidation and anticipation. The evening was bound to be charged, yet the opportunity for redemption rippled quietly beneath the surface. They sat down to dinner, and the air was thick with unspoken words. The children moved through the meal jovially, providing a soft buffer, while Michael established neutral footing. Then, as they finished dessert, Rachel turned and looked at him directly, her voice shaky. "I've thought about everything that happened," she began, her voice earnest, shaky. "And I can't express enough how sorry I am for betraying your trust. It was selfish, and I realize how badly I treated you and how much I hurt the kids." He nodded, absorbing her words, but cautious. "The damage you caused was profound, Rachel. It's not just about us. It affected everyone who cared about us." "I know," she continued, emotion knitting her brow. "I didn't think about the ripple effect, and I see that now. I was so caught up in what I wanted, I lost sight of everything else. I've wanted to tell you how sorry I am every day. Not to erase the past, but to honor its lessons. I want to be better." Michael's heart thudded as he weighed her sincerity. People weren't always straightforward, but he could sense deep honesty threaded through her words. Being better doesn't just come from saying the words, Rachel. It requires action, commitment, and understanding that trust is won over time. Their gazes locked, the gravity of the moment anchoring them amidst the whirlwind surrounding their past. "I'm ready for that," Rachel asserted. "I want to rebuild, even if it takes time." He contemplated her sincerity as the words hung there, fragile but tenacious, a bridge that warranted repair. With a sigh, he leaned back, letting the nuance of their desires settle within. "Then let's take it one step at a time. If we're to move forward, it'll be a process. For our sake and the kids' sake. I will tread carefully." "Agreed," Rachel breathed, a hint of relief painted across her features. As laughter and conversations flowed naturally afterward, Michael realized he had begun to step on the path where healing could emerge, as treacherous as some stones might be. The journey ahead would be complex, tinged with fragility, yet it held the potential for renewal. Each step forward began to shine brightly against the canvas of darkness they had endured, proving that beneath the pain of betrayal lay the foundations for reliability and understanding. The world was rendered dynamic, malleable, wholly subject to their hands. And in that moment, forgiving wasn't just about the scattered pieces of their past. It became a commitment to building futures that thrived on empathy, understanding, and the profound strength of vulnerability in the face of adversity. Every shared laugh across the dinner table, every tentative touch igniting memories of love, revealed that redemption could rise even from the ashes of despair. Together they would learn the art of nurturing trust, slowly, deliberately, step by step, rebuilding their connected destinies, crafted anew. As dinner transformed into laughter and stories, the atmosphere in the room lifted, weaving a sense of warmth that seemed almost foreign after all the hurt they had endured. The children, oblivious to the complex history unfolded before them, danced through the evening like a bright breeze, instinctively filling the gaps that had once threatened to drown them in silence. Rachel leaned in closer to the table, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her wine glass, and Michael couldn't help but catch a momentary glimpse of the woman he once fell for, a woman brimming with life before betrayal clouded their connection. "You know," she began, her voice tentative, "I never intended for it to become such a mess. I got lost in my own shortcomings and selfish desires. Seeing how it devastated our kids, that broke me." Michael's heart softened, but caution lingered. "Rachel, regret is one thing. Accepting the effect of that regret is another. It's good to hear that you're aware of the hurt you caused, but change isn't instant." "I know," she acknowledged, her eyes sincere and earnest. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, but I do want a chance to show the kids, and you, that I'm willing to work at it. I'm doing therapy, reflecting, trying to understand what led me to betray everything I held dear. Acknowledging the need for growth is a crucial first step." He felt a flicker of hope as he regarded her. "But it'll take time for them to trust you again. It won't be easy." "I understand," she murmured, a hint of sadness tugging at her expression. "And I'm willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means waiting for them to come around." The reassurance hung in the air, filled with the promise for something that resembled healing, rather than taking a backward step into denial. He watched his children, curious little beings who brimmed with boundless love, unaware of the emotional complexity threading through their lives. "Can I tell you something?" Danny chimed in, his innocent curiosity breaking through the weight of the moment. "I think it's cool that you're back, Miss Rachel. But you gotta bake cookies again if you want the trust back." Laughter erupted, diffusing any lingering tension that had settled in. It was a simple truth spoken from the mouth of a child, one that resonated with the necessity of sweetness amid the bitterness. Rachel's smile widened at the invitation as she turned to Danny, her eyes lighting up with gratitude. "Absolutely. I've missed baking with you and Mia." "Maybe we can whip up that cookie rocket idea together," Rachel replied, her expression earnest, the sincerity pulling on the threads of her own redemption. "Yeah!" Mia squealed, her enthusiasm warming the room even more. "We'll make the best cookies ever." As they moved through playful banter, Michael found himself unable to suppress a smile. This wasn't simply about reconciling past mistakes. It was about forging new paths together, even when they bristled with uncertainty. After the dinner plates were cleared, the children bounced into their room, delighted with the prospect of baking adventures. Michael found himself alone with Rachel, the quiet now filled with a myriad of untold stories. "Thank you for being okay with this," Rachel said, her eyes searching his for affirmation. "I know it's not easy. It's the opposite of that, isn't it?" "Honestly?" Michael hesitated, feeling the magnitude of the weight they both carried. "It's an adjustment. I'm building up my own walls of understanding in hopes that we can deconstruct them together, piece by piece. But it doesn't mean the pain has vanished." Rachel nodded, her expression somber but resolute. "I'm aware of that. I don't expect everything to fall into place overnight. But I'm grateful you're willing to give this another shot, even if it's a small one." Silence sat between them, one pregnant with the possibility of change and the shadows of the past still lingering. "I think understanding will be the bedrock of our new foundation, Rachel. To heal the wounds we've inflicted on each other, words must transform into action, he said, gentle but firm. Can I ask something personal? She ventured after a moment. What makes it easier for you to start over? Isn't the temptation to just walk away easier? Michael took a breath, contemplating her question, knowing the answer was layered. There are days I wish I could simply walk away. The betrayal rattled me to my core, but those thoughts weary me. I realize we have a history, both good and bad, and if there's any chance of transforming that into something beautiful, I feel I owe it to us, to the memories, and especially to our kids. Beautifully put, Rachel said, and he noted the combination of sadness and appreciation in her voice. I wish there had been a way to reconsider it all beforehand. Wishing won't rebuild the bridges destroyed, he reminded gently, yet he sensed a flicker of hope intertwined with the reality of her remorse. The path she was navigating seemed daunting. Can we start anew then? Rachel asked, her voice steady now. I want to approach this as if we're introducing ourselves. Our past was flawed, but maybe the future can be something worth experiencing together in a new light. Michael considered her words profoundly, feeling their weight. Perhaps we can. Starting over means building from shared ground, but it also means focusing on creating something healthy and nurturing, not just for us, but the kids too. A calm understanding blossomed between them, establishing a tenuous but hopeful path forward. I'm ready to embrace that journey with you, Rachel affirmed, her expression earnest again, alive with a fresh commitment, both aware of the work that lay ahead. As the evening wore on and they began to unwind, giving space to the comforts of honest dialogue, Michael marveled at how far this moment diverged from the chaos of their past. There was still uncertainty lurking, but this new approach was anchored in sincerity and healing, a process devoid of the weight of betrayal. Over the following weeks, they crafted paths toward healing. Parenting their children together grew more natural as laughter echoed in their shared interactions. Watching Rachel foster connections with Mia and Danny illuminated the softer side he had once cherished. The kids began eagerly anticipating baking nights, and soon enough, chocolate chip cookies morphed into a weekend ritual. Flour coated every corner of the kitchen as Rachel and the kids squealed with delight, while Michael took joy in observing from the sidelines, a blissfully bemused smile gracing his lips. With every shared moment, Michael saw Rachel evolve. Healing took form in the trial of regained trust, and he began to sense that the road forward wasn't one filled with sharp sentiments of resentment. It carried the whispers of forgotten affections that could rekindle genuine connections. Yet even with those moments of joy, the specter of their shared history still loomed in unguarded corners. Time needed to breathe, to mend frayed bonds. Emotional scars did not fade overnight, and though the laughter flowed, a part of him remained cautious, alert to moments where resentment might angle to resurface. One evening afterward, while cleaning up after another joyful baking escapade, Michael halted as Rachel handed him a cookie. I wanted to share this with you, like how we used to make cookies for each other, she smiled, reminiscent and hopeful. Relenting, he accepted the token with a wry smile. You know what? These might just be the best cookies to have ever existed. They shared laughter, embracing that warmth for what it symbolized. In the depths of their relationship, the journey still unfolded, fueled not merely by nostalgia, but genuine moments of reconnection, reshaping the connections that once tangled them. As days melted into weeks, Michael knew transformation occurred not through erasure, but emanating from their very willingness to forgive, learn, and build anew. This time echoing in the laughter of their children, and strong enough to lift them through their hard-won reclamation of trust. And while tomorrow may still hold uncertainties, they walked forward with resolute hearts, side by side, eternally tethered to the past, but resolved to forge a brighter future together. The power to create to rise amidst adversity, laid clear in their shared journey, and Michael sensed the veil of betrayal beginning to lift, giving space for light and love to fill the gaps that betrayal once carved into their lives. Hand in hand, they sought to reimagine tomorrow, aware that with open hearts and resilience, they had the power to craft a destiny far removed from the shadows they'd once shared. Together, they welcomed this newfound rhythm, buoyed by the laughter of their children, sculpting a tale that transcended pain into profound empathy and a recognition of the beauty forged from fragile beginnings. As the months slipped by, the rhythm of their redefined family life settled into a comfortable groove. Dinner conversations became interwoven with discussions of school projects, their children's hobbies, and Rachel's newfound interest in hosting small gatherings. They found joy in simple pleasures, often rediscovering the nuances of each other's personalities that had been overshadowed in their tumultuous past. Michael found himself laughing more than he ever thought possible after all they had endured. One crisp Saturday morning, the family decided to embark on a hiking trip to a nearby scenic spot. The air was suffused with the fragrant scent of pine and fallen leaves, and the sun illuminated the landscape with a warm glow. As they trekked along the winding paths, Michael watched the excitement radiate from his children, who raced ahead, giggling as they explored nature's wonders. "Keep up, Dad," Danny called, his laughter echoing against the backdrop of rustling leaves. Rachel joined in, her laughter dancing with their children's. As Michael followed, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. This was the life he had longed for. Moments filled with innocence, joy, and connection. At the summit, the view opened up into a breathtaking panorama, the horizon stretching endlessly before them. They settled on a large rock, taking in the beauty of nature surrounding them. Rachel turned to Michael, her expression reflective. "Look at this. Isn't it amazing?" "Absolutely," he replied, his gaze moving between her and the vast expanse. "This feels free, like there's a fresh start in the air." She nodded, the corners of her mouth curling into a wistful smile. "I'm really proud of how far we've come, how far I've come. It wasn't easy to confront my past mistakes, but having you and the kids by my side has meant the world. I won't lie and say it's been simple. It's been a journey, one step at a time," he admitted, looking into her eyes and sensing the truth behind her sincerity. "But watching you bond with the kids, seeing them light up around you, reminds me why I chose to give this a chance." "Thank you for that," Rachel said softly. "That time apart made me realize how much I took for granted. And now, I don't ever want to go back to that place." With their children leaning against them, absorbed in their own conversations, Michael allowed space for a contemplative silence. He could feel how the burdens of their past had gradually begun to dissipate, the tension easing with each shared smile and memory reconstructed. As the sunlight began to dip lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, he caught sight of Danny and Mia darting toward a small clearing, squealing with delight. They collected sticks, indicating they were planning some game only children could envision. The delight was uncontainable, a vivid reminder that resilience was born not just from healing, but from embracing every moment. Back at home, the Sundays were often dedicated to family movie nights. They would build blanket forts, stow away with popcorn, and indulge in cherished flicks that tugged at their heartstrings. Michael's resolve to foster connection transformed into a commitment to ensure that laughter would persist in the halls they'd once filled with anger. It was during one of these movie nights that Michael noticed a change in Rachel. She was more present, engaging actively with the kids, and laughing, genuine laughter that echoed through his heart like a soothing balm. It comforted him to see the light returning to her eyes, but an edge of caution still lingered within him. "Why are you smiling at me like that?" Rachel teased, nudging him playfully as they sat on the couch. "Just watching you and the kids," he replied, his smile widening. "It feels good to know how far we've come together. You're dedicated to nurturing this family. It means a lot. I just want to make everything right again," she stated earnestly. "I want them to see how much I love them, despite the mistakes I made. They see that, Michael replied, nodding. With time, things can heal. But it's not just about love. It's about building a foundation of trust again. That takes effort from all sides. As they continued sharing stories and laughing late into the evening, he felt a flicker of optimism grow. Yes, rebuilding trust was a journey, one that still required active engagement and vulnerability. But they were in it together, and for each moment that resembled a step forward, it was possible to navigate the rough patches ahead. However, the reality of their past loomed despite the camaraderie nurtured between them. One crisp morning, as he sipped coffee and gazed at the growing light filtering through the kitchen window, he received an unexpected call from his brother, Mark. The tone held an urgency that demanded his attention. "Hey, Michael, you need to come over. It's about Rachel," he said, his grim tone igniting a swell of anxiety. "Is everything okay?" Michael inquired, concern threading through his voice. "Not really. I think she needs to talk about her past. And it's clear some unresolved things came to light." "Explain," Michael urged, struggling to comprehend what could have happened. "She ran into Greg. They had a conversation that shook her up. I think she's been trying to process it while keeping it together," Mark explained. The revelation hit Michael like a punch to the gut. Memories of betrayal flashed through his mind. Greg's smug facade, the laughter that echoed during his lowest moments. That dark specter of the past reared its head once more, provoking insecurities he thought long buried. "Thanks for calling," he responded tersely, his heart racing. "I'll be over shortly." Arriving at Mark's house, Michael felt a tug of war in his chest. The mixture of concern for Rachel and the possibility of renewed conflict stirred insecurities within him. What had she and Greg discussed? Were their feelings unsettled, stirring in the depths of their history? Upon his arrival, Rachel looked up, her face pale and drawn, betraying the weight of the conversation she'd just had. "Michael," she said, her voice hushed. "What happened?" He pushed gently, but with urgency, unwilling to let uncertainty fester. I didn't plan for it to haphazardly occur," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I saw him at the coffee shop and thought he had changed. I thought I could manage myself around him." Michael took a deep breath, feeling the hurt surge again. What did he say? How did it unravel? Rachel paused, collecting her thoughts before speaking. "He tried to apologize, talk about our past. I thought that if I heard it out, it would somehow bring closure, but it turned into a spiral of confusion." "Did he invoke emotions? Did it make you question us?" "No." She shook her head, frustration glimmering through her tears. "It made it painfully clear how much I've lost, and the foolishness of my past choices. I see our new life, and he only represents the pain, the mistakes I wish I could erase." In that moment, Michael caught a glimpse of her struggle, the tempest of emotions confronting her. "See, I don't want you to lose yourself in that past. It's always going to linger, but it doesn't define who you are today. We've made it through so much together." "Michael, No, let me finish," he interrupted gently yet firmly. "I don't want you feeling burdened by old memories. I want you to know that I'm proud of the progress we've made. You're doing incredible. Don't forget that." Rachel nodded, clearly wrestling with her emotions, but now imbibing his words of encouragement. "I want so badly to just forget. To deny his presence has ever affected me. Maybe we can turn this into a catalyst for further healing. Acknowledging missteps in the past can serve as the foundation for the growth I know you're capable of," he said, his tone resolute yet comforting. I can't seem to shake the feeling that part of him still exists in me. Like, I let myself down. Rachel, let's focus on the steps ahead. We can't erase old chapters, but we can write new ones," he encouraged, leaning closer. "You're brave enough to confront this, and I admire you for wanting to share it with me." The room fell silent, yet the air crackled with the weight of their shared realizations, the struggle to reconcile life's tapestry. "Together, we'll navigate these feelings," he reassured her, taking her hand gently. "We're both in this together." As Rachel looked into his eyes, He understood they had arrived at a pivotal juncture. Not only had they conquered the fear of the past, but they were also seizing the truth of moments to come. Challenging, yes, but necessary for enduring transformation. With soft determination, they slowly embarked on their journey of rebuilding, embracing both adversities and joys alike. They would grow with resilience, converging towards an understanding that was uniquely theirs, fortified by shared intentions of forgiveness, acceptance, and above all, love. Life would continue to ebb and flow. Forward they would venture hand in hand, crafting a story worthy of its own legacy, a tale resplendent with forgiveness, rekindled love, and the beautiful promise of new beginnings. They emerged as two souls intertwined, unraveling the complexity of their shared narrative to mold a more profound connection filled with the radiant hues of hope, transforming even their darkest times into a rich palette of life. For the storms of the past form the very fabric of their narrative, now transformed, woven together, inviting all that lay ahead. As the weeks passed following Rachel's encounter with Greg, a renewed sense of purpose settled over Michael and Rachel's household. They altered their routine, integrating small rituals that reflected their commitment to one another and their evolving family dynamics. What had previously felt cumbersome became a tapestry of carefully woven moments, binding together the choices they hoped would cement their renewed trust. One evening, as autumn leaves fell outside, Michael sat at the kitchen table with the children, while Rachel prepared a hearty stew simmering on the stove. The warm aromas filled the air, an inviting backdrop for the energy buzzing in their shared space. "Dad," Mia piped up, her eyes bright with anticipation, "can we make another family project? We could build a treehouse in the backyard." "That sounds amazing. But do we have enough trees for a treehouse?" Michael laughed, raising an eyebrow. Mia and Danny exchanged knowing glances, and Danny chimed in, "We can work together to figure it out. We can use that big old oak tree in the corner." Rachel entered the room, wiping her hands on the apron she wore. "What's all this excitement about?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe, her curiosity piqued. Mia eagerly explained their plan, her words spilling over themselves in enthusiasm. "It'll be our secret hideout. We can decorate it and have snacks up there." Michael admired their creativity, recognizing that this was a chance for them all to bond authentically. "All right, but let's make sure it's safe, and we can plan for that this weekend," he agreed. The room erupted into cheers, and for Michael, joy shimmered in the air, a potent reminder of how far they had all come. As the children scampered off into their daydreams of treehouse adventures, Michael took a moment to appreciate the warmth radiating through their quaint kitchen. It symbolized the burgeoning hope that had spread like early spring blossoms after a long, bitter winter. Later that evening, as the children settled down for bed, Rachel joined Michael on the porch under a canopy of stars. The air was cooler, and with it came a tranquility that replaced the earlier tension that had permeated their lives. "About today," Rachel began, her voice low, "I've been thinking. I feel like I'm still processing that conversation with Greg, but I also realize that I don't have to let it define me." Michael turned to her, reassured by her candor. "It won't. As long as you continue focusing on us, our family, and our future together, that lingering shadow of doubt will fade further into the background." "Agreed," Rachel said, nodding thoughtfully. "And I appreciate you always encouraging me. It helps to remind me to frame my past simply as a part of my journey." "Exactly," he replied, hoping his understanding would ease the burden she probably still felt. "The goal is to take those past mistakes and transform them into lessons. What's important is how we choose to move forward." The rhythm of their conversation flowed comfortably, and an undercurrent of resilience intertwined with optimism came forth. Can we make it a point to share especially the heavier moments with each other?" Rachel asked, biting her lip. "I don't want to become secluded in my feelings again. I want to navigate everything together." "You can count on it," Michael reassured her, warmth blooming in his chest. "Keeping the lines of communication open will be key to our growth. That includes moments of doubt or confusion." As they sat in silence, enveloped by the cool autumn breeze, Their silhouettes hinted at unraveling narratives driven by strength whenever they faced hardships together. It was profound to Michael, how connection drew them closer to one another than Google or video chats could offer. What they were forging was something entirely unique, one reflected in laughter, tears, and a rich mixture of mundane gestures. As the days melted into weeks, the planning for the treehouse took shape. Michael, Rachel, and the children spent weekends packing snacks, gathering tools, and poring over designs they would scrawl on craft paper. The children made it a thrilling adventure, transforming the space into a bustling hub of ideas and imagination. "Can we paint a slide down the side?" Danny suggested one afternoon, sprawled on the grass while munching on carrot sticks. "Absolutely," Rachel nodded, her enthusiasm lifting. "We could paint bright colors to make it feel magical, just like a fort should be. And maybe we could add a rope ladder too." After days of planning and dreaming, the treehouse began to take shape. The process was messy, filled with spilled paint and laughter at each miscommunication, but it was a time of togetherness and bonding. That simple act of constructing something tangible forged their connection, reinforcing the trust born from vulnerability and forgiveness. However, even amid these joys, Michael couldn't shake the gnawing pain from thoughts of Rachel's past. He felt it wrapped around them like an unseen thread, a subtle reminder of how fragile their new foundation remained. Deep down, he knew their journey was far from over, that challenges would resurface, but for now, he chose to focus on their progress. One evening, as twilight draped the sky in a cloak of purple and gold, and the treehouse stood proudly in the yard, Michael and Rachel took their first moment to breathe it all in. The children had run up the rickety ladder, squealing with delight atop their newly built sanctuary, and it felt like a victory. "I can't believe we did this," Rachel said, her heart filled with gratitude. "Look at what we built." "Together," he replied, grinning. "Every element speaks to our journey." "I think this treehouse embodies who we are now, not the past." "Speaking of the past," Rachel said cautiously, "I still want to address how we can create safe spaces in our lives to withstand whatever comes next." "That's smart," Michael acknowledged, taking a deep breath. "Let's promise to never silence one another, to bring our worries, memories, and confessions into the open." "Agreed," Rachel said, letting out a breath of relief. "It feels good to know that we can enhance our communication." They shared a fleeting glance, full of understanding, a shared promise to confront whatever obstacles might loom ahead. The shadows of the past never fully erased, yet they found strength together through forgiveness, empathy, and genuine intention. Then, from the treehouse, Mia shouted, "Look, Mom! We can see all the way to the park." Her voice pierced through the silence, joy radiating above their conversations, reminding them that while the past could echo, the present sparkled with potential. "I think this is the best decision we ever made," Rachel said, watching her children from the porch, contentment wrapping around them like a visible warmth. Sometimes it was easy to forget how far they had come while prioritizing joy. As dusk faded into a blanket of stars, Michael gripped Rachel's hand. "No matter the shadows that linger in life, it's within our power to create light we choose to allow in." In that moment of understanding, born from shared love, joy, and commitment, they embraced every unwritten word of their narrative ahead. Together, they stepped toward a future invisible, yet shimmering tender reminders that they had emerged victorious from adversity with an even stronger bond than before. In the luminous laughter of their children, they recognized a powerful truth. Healing, forgiveness, and love were infinitely worth pursuing, even through shadows left from the past.